So I'm sure most of you are aware that Donald Glover put out the song This Is America, which addresses various race problems in America to do with African Americans and police and gun violence and everything like that. And it's clearly resonated with a lot of African Americans and really people in general. It's really highlighted a lot of social issues, and it's great that an artist like this is using his platform to raise issues that a lot of people like him don't necessarily do. So I'm thinking about Kanye West, or all the things he said lately, you know, allying with Donald Trump, saying about slavery and everything. And it's really refreshing to see someone like Donald Glover to put out a music video like this that really takes chances and everything. But this has prompted some responses from other people. So Nicole Arbour has made her own version of This Is America. So the purpose of this video is to really discuss why it's problematic and why I think this is going to be different from a lot of other YouTubers' takes, is because I'm pretty aware of politics. My whole channel is dedicated to politics. But what I've seen a lot of other YouTubers do is just watch the video and laugh at it, basically, and not really say anything meaningful about why it's a problem. So I'm going to get into that. So basically the whole idea around Nicole Arbour's video is that it's like what Donald Glover has done in raising black issues in America. She's trying to do it to raise women's issues. But people have largely responded negatively. On her video, it has 32,000 likes and 114,000 dislikes with 1.1 million views. Now, she's clearly aware of this criticism because she wrote in her description a long statement, so I'm going to talk about it now. So she says, "About This Is America, Women's Edit, I thought it best to respond to the misinterpretation of my video to clarify openly. The purpose of my rendition was to honour the spirit of the video, which absolutely moved me, by adding my and many women's experiences and truths to the brave and brutal truths expressed in the original. It was created with every intention of bringing a light to women's experiences, such as the shaming of mothers breastfeeding, commonplace date rape, drugging, the labels put on us as prude or hoe, pressures to create a family, workplace harassment, the glass ceiling, drug dependency, effects of social media on modern relationships, and self, and including a nod to the cheerleaders who have come forward demanding at least minimum wage from the multi-million-dollar corporations that they work for. It was a tongue-in-cheek way to give an additional glory to what I believe is the most impactful piece of art in recent years. In retrospect, due to the sensitive nature of the original, I understand why some people are wrongly portraying this as white versus black. However, this was not the intent or theme at all. We had a very diverse cast and creative team working on the project from start to finish, who signed on to honour the original while adding more truth from another perspective. I also understand my cheeky responses to hateful comments have been taken out of context, which I haven't actually seen any of these, and I take full responsibility for responding to trolls in a way that could be so easily manipulated and become hurtful when reposted without context. I firmly believe the best thing that can happen in America and North America right now is for everyone to create their own version of this video and show what life is like from their side. Through this honesty, I believe we can discover a new level of empathy and understanding for each other that will ultimately and finally lead us to healing and unity that is desperately needed in society. What can we agree on? What do we have in common? Where are we hurting? Start there, then rebuild. Thanks so much for the continued support while I discover how to best to express my ideas, comedy and art, and I appreciate your patience when I fumble while learning to maneuver within the awesome blessing that is having such a large voice. Love for everyone, go team." Now, a lot of people hate Nicole Arbour anyway, but I've watched a couple of her videos, and politically, I'm talking just politically, not her societal ideas, but politically she seems on the right track. She was talking about in one of her videos how, you know, it's crazy that Americans get so outraged by black players, you know, taking a knee for the national anthem. So she's clearly aware of some of the issues and racial issues in America. But I want to get into why it's a problem, and her statement there is a bit of a problem. So she's saying that she made this to represent women's problems in America. And I think this is wrong because she's taken something that is so specific to the African American experience in America and trying to just be like, yeah, well, that's bad, but take a look at this. And I don't like the idea of everyone taking this and being like, this is the American experience for everyone else, because there is something about being African American in America that is so different from any other, I guess, oppressed groups. So you're really trying to tell me women are as systemically oppressed as black people in America? That's just not true. Sure, they have it very hard, and we've seen with the Harvey Weinstein stuff, and, you know, we really know as a society there's rampant sexism, but it isn't really much compared to what African Americans have to deal with. So let's get into why black people in America have such a unique experience. So unlike a lot of European countries, right, so I'm talking from experience from the UK, most of our black population and any immigrant population, they came to our country after World War II. So after World War II, 400,000 British men had died and we needed a new workforce. So basically we invited all the countries in the Commonwealth and in the Empire to come over and work for us. So that included places like Jamaica, included places like India, Pakistan, all these places, they came to us. And that's where our black population really comes from. Britain does have a really bad history of racism as well. I'm not going to deny that, but I'm just painting a picture of how the black experience in Britain, even though there might be some similarities, is inherently different because of the legacy of, you know, how they've come over. So most black people in Britain are not descended from slaves. Even though they might come from areas where slaves lived and slaves were taken, like Jamaica. So for example, if you're from Jamaica, the original people in Jamaica weren't black and Africans. they're slaves, obviously, slave descendants, but the way they came to Britain was basically from their own free will to come to have some work. And although they did face oppression when they came here, I'm just trying to point out the differences. But nearly every black person in the United States was stolen from Africa and taken there. And every black person in the United States, whether they be, you know, from the Caribbean or South America, or just, you know, they are, I guess, born in America and everything, and their legacy is all in the slave trade. Their ancestors were all stolen from their own countries and taken to America. And America has a very, very bad history of race itself. So, you know, in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, it said that all men should be treated equally. But that didn't say that slavery should be outlawed. So even in America, its independence, they still had many slaves. And what people don't realise, America is built on the backs of slaves. And why do you think there was a civil war in America? People say, oh, it's states' rights. But that's because the South depended on slave labour to prop up its economy. When you have hundreds and hundreds of years of that history, it becomes embedded in society. And even after slavery was abolished, to reconstruct the United States, the president, I think it's Andrew Johnson, he gave them really slavery by a different name. You know, the police force in America was really set up to keep black workers in line and keep them in check. Black people were still heavily, heavily discriminated. It wasn't really proper freedom for them in the South especially. And then you have Jim Crow laws, and then you have the civil rights movement, you know, just asking for basic civil rights, being beaten and killed and lynched. This is happening for America for all its history, essentially. And then even when you get later on, there's still loads of stuff, the KKK, Black Panthers, you know, the way they targeted the Black Panthers is disgusting. That's what the legacy of racism in America still is today. And then, I don't know how many of you have watched the documentary about O.J. Simpson that won the Oscar, or even the TV series, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, but you see even in the 1990s, racism is rife in America, especially towards African Americans. And we don't even have to go back 20 years. You have to look in the recent past, you know, Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner, and then all these people he meant, Childish Gambino, references in his video. It's so specific to the African American experience of America and how African Americans are still discriminated against. You know, the war on drugs, the 13th Amendment, that all targets African Americans. You know, African Americans who are locked up in prison for 20 years for something to do with marijuana. This is not something that happens to women in general, and white women especially. No, it doesn't. So the equivalency is not really there. And what is also annoying is there are massive problems with women's rights in America and the world. But her video is so poor at really showing them. So you've got date rape, cheerleaders not being paid minimum wage, and some other like really frivolous stuff. You know, it's important and date rape does exist and everything, but are you really comparing that to systematic governmental and police force abuse of African Americans who get shot for doing nothing? You know, Trayvon Martin, stalked by George Zimmerman and murdered, he gets off. Nearly every policeman who's murdered an innocent black person or an unarmed black person has got off free. That is completely different from cheerleaders not being paid minimum wage by a corporation. You know, both things are shitty, but it doesn't really compare. And then most of her video as well, it's just her dancing around with cheerleaders and on cars. Like, it doesn't really have anything to say. I'd be a bit more sympathetic if it was actually meaningful. So, women's rights in America. So, put someone like a Harvey Weinstein, Donald Trump. You know, if you're talking about women's rights in America, he's apparently, or allegedly, sexually assaulted 19 people, walked in on teenage girls in their dressing rooms, raped his ex-wife, put Donald Trump in there, put Harvey Weinstein, maybe to talk about religion. Talk about, you know, how religion in America, there's a really good book I go on about this all the time, but this suffragette called Elizabeth Cady Stanton called The Woman's Bible, who says that nearly all women's oppression in Europe and America has come from the Bible. And if you're going to talk about Christianity, why don't you talk about Islam? Talk about hijab, talk about the burqa. If you're doing a universal, you know, thing, sort of, if you're trying to talk about all women or talk about the, you know, experience in America, talk about religious discrimination of women. Why don't you show someone, you know, attacking Planned Parenthood, shooting up an abortion clinic? That's something that's more powerful, but you just go for really low-hanging fruit, really easy things that anyone could say, oh, date rape, cheerleaders not being paid minimum wage. And do you think that honestly really compares to the stuff that Donald Glover put in his thing? That's important, and that's why it's problematic. You've taken his format and tried to be like, everyone take his format and show your experience of America. That's not the point. He wasn't saying, you know, this is my experience in America or the black experience in America. What about you women? What about you Asians? What about you, I don't know, gay people? That's not what he's saying. It's specific about black people, and that's why it's annoying that some white woman who's not even American, I think she said she's Canadian in one of her other videos, is saying, oh, this is the women experience in America, and it's just for attention at the end of the day. That's what I feel, because she doesn't go nearly far enough. There isn't really any substance to it. It's just like, hey, look at me, I'm a feminist, I've made this women's version, and it really has nothing. It holds, you know, comparing what she says in her video to the stuff Donald Glover puts in his video is nothing. He's referencing the Charleston shooting of the church by Dylan Roof. He's referencing Trayvon Martin. He's referencing the way America treats guns better than black people and everything. Gun rights is more important than black rights. And that is so much more, I guess, poignant, and it makes more sense. So the fact that you're taking his format and being like, everyone should do it, make about your experience in America. No, because African American experience in America is still not fixed, and the difference is you're talking about a lot of societal problems. African Americans get this from the government and police. You know, there's sexism is rife throughout the world, and as is racism, but there's something specific about African Americans in America that he can point to, be like, this is so fucked up and people don't care about it, and look at all this stuff that goes wrong but you guys don't care about. And Nicole Arbour, if she attempted to do something similar, like I was saying, there's so much problems to do with women in America she could have targeted, but she didn't. She went for, like I said, easy targets, not controversial targets, even though her video's got so many dislikes now. She doesn't even really go for it, and that's the annoying thing. And I think she misunderstands the point of the video. It's all about specifically how America, you know, doesn't really care about black people, how it's always treated them so badly, and, you know, their history in America of just being slaves and slave descendants, that legacy has never really gone away. It kind of reminds me of the caste system in India, where that has been outlawed for decades, but people still really abide to it, and there's still that stigma of the people at the lowest, who used to be the lowest caste, treated by the people who are higher caste. And that's what that reminds me of in America, because how do people not see waving a Confederate flag is wrong? Naming high schools after Confederates is wrong, especially in areas that have a massive black population. Imagine being so oblivious or being so hateful you don't realise that. Imagine if you were an African American, especially growing up in the 60s to now, going to school named after someone who fought a war against the United States so he could keep you and your ancestors in chains with no rights. And you've got to go to school, or you've got to see people having bumper stickers with Confederate flags. There's nothing like that for women. And it's just really not comparable. It's all important, but at the same time, I think that if you want to make a video about women's rights, do something else. Don't take away from some black guy's art, which is addressing something that a lot of black artists don't do as explicitly as he has. And then you're just being like, oh, but look at me, look at women. And it doesn't seem sincere, because the stuff you're addressing is really not as bad as what he's doing, and the biggest issues for women in America you're not actually targeting, so it seems so pointless. And yeah, like I said, it seems like you just want attention. So that's my main problem. I don't think she's necessarily a bad person or she has bad political views inherently, but the whole thing of this is just problematic to me because it just seems pointless, and it seems, like I said, just for attention. I don't understand. There's nothing profound about what she's saying. I didn't watch and be like, oh gee, women do have it bad. I obviously know they do. But it did nothing for me. Watching This Is America by Donald Glover, I'm just like, yeah, this is fucked up. And it does it in a cool way that makes me realise, you know, why these problems get overlooked and why they care about certain other things and everything like that. And Nicole Arbour's thing didn't do anything for me. It just seems like you're doing this for attention, and you're dancing for 50, 60% of it and just tackling some issues about minimum wage and date rape. It's hardly systemic oppression of women, is it? And you could argue that it can happen in places, but you're not arguing that. So what do you guys think? Do you think she had the right idea? Do you think, you know, people should start making their own Mrs. Americas? I think it's kind of stupid to steal the format. If I'm honest, just make your own thing, because he's gone out the way to make his own thing. If you're on Twitter, follow me at @TheCavernacle, and if you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you like this sort of stuff.